Greebos, and welcome to the Orc Fort Podcast. This is Xu'rek, and today I have the legendary Mr. Starr Long. Lord Blackthorn himself is our special guest today. Starr and I sit down and talk about everything UO. We kind of cover it all and touch on a bit of roleplay and some of the features about the game that we all know and love. So I encourage you to grab your bottle of grog, sharpen that blood axe, and march into the Orc Fort. Catch a seat next to the campfire and enjoy today's episode. All right, Mr. Starr Long, how's it going, man? Welcome to the Orc Fort Podcast. It's a little nicer than you probably anticipated, but you are in the Orc Fort, man. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Excited. Rawr.
Yeah, so our war chant is Nugra. It's
Nugra.
Nugra. Yeah, that's our clan war cry.
Nice.
But yeah, no, I reached out to you because we were chatting a little bit before we kind of started, but some of us, I hear some of your interviews, man, and you talk about UO and you talk about back in '92 when you started testing, and I heard it all, and for a lot of people this is history, right? This is a game they recall from their youth. For some of us, the lingering few, we still play this game in 2025. So I said, let me reach out to him. Let's have a conversation, man. 30 years after the fact, some of us fully grown men with families, kids, careers, and we still log on and we play your game, man. So it's an absolute honor to have you here, man. I want to start off by saying thank you. You made it happen. The best game ever, brother. And you were the executive producer. So huge thank you to you, man. I appreciate the work you put into it.
Well, I have to say I'm honored that you would have me here and that you're playing and that you would ask me to come talk to you guys. Like, I often say, like, if I could go back in time and tell, my 20-something-year-old self back in '95, hey, this game you're starting on is still going to be running 30 years later, I would never believe it. Like,
is it? I guess that's one question we always ask ourselves in the community. Like, whenever you were doing it, did it feel? I mean, it surely didn't just feel like a job. You were creating something at least groundbreaking in that it was the first online. It was Multima, man. So you knew it was something, but you couldn't have imagined the scope of it.
We didn't imagine the longevity, nor could we imagine how much power the players would have. It's funny that you look now at everything that the game world and the social networking world is like now.
Right.
But you go back in time and you look at what it was like back in the early 90s, and I don't think we really grasped what it would be like now. But we sort of had an inkling of what it could be. I mean, I think that was the sort of inspiration for why we built it, right? We had team members who came from MUDs. We had those of us who were really passionate about multiplayer who caught the bug when we started playing Doom, right? I mean, that's my story, right? My story was it was a rocket to the face. That's the story I always, is playing Doom and running around the corner, because it was always the race to the rocket launcher, right? And so I came around, it would always be whoever got to the rocket launcher, and it's the classic, you come around the corner and it's boom, you get a rocket in the face and it's instant death, right? And so it was always that beautiful unpredictability that other humans bring to gameplay, whether it's through combat or creating things or just conversation, right?
Yeah.
And something that, while you can tell beautiful stories with NPCs and scripted interactions, they are, kind of a one and done. Like, you consume it like you consume a movie or a book, and then you can go back and experience it, and you can have slight variations in the experience, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah,
You know,
and that's something that's interesting for us actually, because we say this all the time. If you go to our website, we have this thing on the internet called the website for the listeners. It used to be a big deal. We still have it. It's still up and running. But anyway, in there, it gives a little bit of the history. The first logic to orc roleplay, right? The first logic was humans, adventurers, would come across these NPC orcs in your world, right? In Ultima Online. And they were a little bit too easy. They'd get stuck. Our thing is that, early on, they get stuck behind a rock. So people would kite them and min-max the play style. So our founding fathers said, hey, what if we played a little bit tougher NPCs for these guys? So in a way, we twisted kind of what Richard Garriott, in my opinion, sort of envisioned. We weren't the hero avatars anymore. We were the monsters, and we were the random monsters in the dungeon now. We were playing them. And I mean, I guess that's something that's a little different from the envisionment of the game, right? Because here, like, we want to be the stupid orcs swinging a club around. You know what I mean? We want to die. We want to be that. And then thus, we kind of provide a service for the players, and we get gratification. It's weird because we sort of enjoy dying, and we sort of enjoy this lifestyle, man. I don't know. It's sort of strange, but is that something y'all anticipated early on, players taking that approach?
No, but that's the beauty of creating a world where something like that could happen, right?
Right.
I mean, I think that it's not, there's the term of, emergent gameplay, right? And Raph Koster, our lead designer, his thing was always about, if you can create a good enough simulation, right? If you're the layer upon which everyone stands upon, if that simulation is good enough, and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And I think what most people misunderstand about when you say simulation is that it has to be realistic, that it has to simulate the real world in a way that everything has to operate just like the real world. And that's not really what it's about. Really what it's about is it just gives you a set of rules that are consistent.
Correct.
And that you can basically push against, and every time you push against it, it's going to do basically the same thing.
It's a reliable, like the laws of physics. They're reliable. They're consistent. So whatever emerges next, the rules to kind of build upon. We always talk about that because, UO never gave us the orc race. And at first you would think, as a listener, you'd say, well, that sucks. These guys deserve it. They've been orcs for... No, we don't want it because we created it ourselves. We chose a skin and we said, we're all being the skin color. It's the closest thing kind of to what we were envisioning. It's the closest brown to what the brown orcs look like in UO. We're all going to be that. We're going to wear the orc helmet. That's all we need. We don't need to actually be orcs, and that's one thing we gripe about all the time with, like, WoW. As an orc role player, when I started playing WoW, it'd be like, oh, bro, you fucking suck or whatever. It's like, oh, damn it, you're not actually an orc, and I would prefer you all be humans and let the real orcs, right? The real orcs. So you're right, man. It created the foundation for us, and it wasn't perfect. It's not perfect, but it was good enough and great enough as a foundational kind of a platform, if you will, to build on, and that's what we did. So no, yeah, I agree there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So okay, role play. Okay. The game was designed around role playing. I mean, all the Ultima series, Ultima 1 through 8 or 9, I think it was. I mean, it's all kind of like cutting edge role play stuff, right? You all created this space where guilds can form and real communities can thrive, right? So you must have seen that early on. Upon launch, role play guilds, I'm guessing, were there from the start.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, people. Again, one of the things that was, I think, different for Ultima Online versus a lot of the games, especially the ones that came after us, is there wasn't a lot of structure, right? I mean, you weren't really guided of what you were supposed to do from a gameplay. In fact, I mean, there was pretty much none.
Right.
I mean,
You just kind of were born in like a little deer, just get out there and fucking run, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the only structure was, skill game. I mean, that was literally it. I mean, there were no quests. There was no, I mean, every now and then we would have events, but it was just go out and do your own thing.
Right. Meet
And so,
people, interact with humans and go from there.
And so that, basically kind of on purpose, we tried to drive people to each other to, create content for each other.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, whether it was through making stuff, crafting and professions, or whether it was through adventuring or, and so, yeah, it was designed to, push people together to make, whether, guilds or events or, in your case, a whole race.
Yeah, a whole race and a whole language too. We have this like pidgin English language that we have, and we don't speak English in game ever. It is the cardinal rule to never break character and to never not speak in Orcish. So we have our own language system that we created that we still use. It was created originally a variation of it as different clans have created. So we're not the only clan, but other clans created variations. So we've sort of accumulated all that. And yeah, we speak a whole language in your game, man, that we created. Actually, a lot of the orc names that are now household names in our community were created from y'all's NPC names from back in the day. So when they logged on, they'd go kill and just farm a couple orcs because they used to have names, which is something we truly appreciated, because for us, it's all about the immersion. When you log in, you're logging into another reality, right? Like you said, in one of your interviews, you said the favorite thing about UO was that fan letter you got about that kid who couldn't walk and you gave him a world to run in. Yeah. And I think that's true for a lot of us in a different capacity, and the little things that y'all did, man. And I from your position in your job, surely I couldn't even imagine what you guys were juggling, to add a night cycle, to add the little details that y'all added, to give the orcs name versus just calling them in orc, you gave them names, you generate all these things, and it's these little things that really, really sort of made the game special. And one feature like orc names and an orc created an orc fort in an orc community, y'all created that, and 25 years later, 26 years later, some of us are still fucking living off that orc fort, So it's hilarious.
Yeah, and that was, there was a really amazing synergy between Richard Garriott and Raph Koster in that kind of, those two had this kind of continuity about wanting to have a real believable reality.
Yeah.
Right. And, Richard had, Lord British had always, in the single player Ultimas, it was his obsession of that, starting with Ultima 4, that the world had to be a real place.
Correct.
And it was, that's why it was an avatar. It was you going to this other place, and then everything you did in that space had a consequence.
Correct.
That was about maintaining that believability, and that and that everybody has a name. Like all the NPCs had names.
Correct.
And they all had conversations, and you could go back and they had memories of your interactions with them. And then that ended up propagating to a lot of other games too. But
it does create. So I'll give you an example. In Ultima, I think Ultima 4, I think the Game Boy one. I think that's the one you worked on originally, if I'm not mistaken. Or
I worked on the Runes of Virtue Game Boy.
Okay. There's a character in there. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know it that well, but there's a character in there called Judge Dryden. Okay. I have a roleplay character in a free server now that I roleplay as his son. So I read his story. So your character, I mean, that guy, Judge Dryden, a follower, a staunch supporter of Lord Blackthorn, right, during the rebellion, he had a son, and that's my character. I mean, so it gives us the ability to sort of really see it as an alternate world and real people kind of that we can kind of create a community around. So it's really a cool touch. But let me ask you this. I'm curious. Yeah. Okay. What features almost made it that you were like, damn, man, that would have been crazy if that went in, but we just can't do it. Anything that sticks out as you think would have had an impact 30 years in hindsight?
Yeah, I mean, there were several. I mean, we had we had some big elaborate plans for weather.
Dude, oh man! So we play on this free shard, and we can talk about the free shards and your opinion on it later. But no weather, no night cycles, no nothing. And in fact, there's a feature because a lot of these guys are min maxers, right? They're just I need to win at all costs type of guys. They chop the trees down. So you guys made these beautiful oak trees. So there's a distinction. I learned different kinds of plants because you guys and it wasn't just all the same tree. You guys had different trees, or they chop them all down to the stump so their view isn't, so they can see perfectly and they can run exactly how they need to. And I'm like, you guys are ruining the game. There's all these beautiful trees, but so weather, that was a big one.
Yeah, well, so I mean, we, like you said, we had like all the different plants and the trees and tied to, well, so we had all sorts of different weather, and we were going to have weather and seasons, and weather was going to affect not just like conditions, but it was going to affect things like combat. It was going to affect magic.
Oh, man.
So like trying to cast like fire-based magic during rain, like,
oh my god, fizzle chance increased by 20% or something. Right,
so, but like,
please, that would be awesome.
But the opposite was going to be true too. Like if you did like lightning during a rainstorm, it was going to like multiply the effect.
Man, yeah, that's a great. But I can imagine the daunting task that would have been. I mean, but that would have been awesome. That would have been a great feature.
Yeah, and then like during the winter, like ice effects would multiply, and like I mean so I mean it was going to be freaking cool, but it was just way too much. And the seasons were also going to affect the ecology, the virtual ecology. But so there was this whole link to the virtual ecology, which again, you've heard stories about, having to ditch most of that.
You're right, right. But I mean, it's one of those touches that would have been great, right? Winter wolves in the winter come out. These sort of touches would make it even that much more immersive. Okay, so
I think that would have been a big one. I mean, a bunch of the stuff you guys ended up getting later. Like, I mean, we wanted ship-to-ship combat, but you guys, I think, ended up getting a version of that later.
Yeah,
what else was? I mean, I think we had this whole in the alpha, and I can't remember. I'm now kind of fuzzy on what, if any, of this made it into the final version. And this is, and I'll apologize where this may.
I gotta represent. This is This is
nice.
a Microsoft Paint back in the 90s.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
We still use it.
But
I guess anything to do with housing, because you guys really hit the nail on the head with the housing, man. That's something that is just was way ahead of its time. I mean, it's crazy how, I mean, the whole game was, but I think the concept behind player housing was just,
Well, again, I think you guys ended up with a bunch of stuff later, like, because we talked about you guys being able to like build houses from components, and I think you guys have that now, right?
Yeah, I think it was a later rendition. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think there was one part, and I can't remember if we ended up. I think we maybe had to cut it, but in alpha, creatures would level up after they would kill you,
Oh.
and keep your treasure.
I know they would rummage through sometimes they'd rummage to be like whatever rummage through your corpse. They do that later on, but they wouldn't grow based on experience. So
Yeah,
NPC creatures getting experience would be a good one.
yeah, but what ended up happening is in the alpha, I mean, they would get basically godlike pretty much. I mean, as soon as they killed like 4 or 5.
It's just an exponential growth, right? I mean, they're just
Yeah.
going to keep growing, and I can already see the troll players just dying over and over to them on purpose to grow it, and
to gank the next people that come in.
And just stand by it and wait for them to die. Just just UO. Oh man, there's something UO brings out the absolute best people in the world, and some of the worst. Oh, in a gaming sense, they're not bad people. I just mean in a gaming sense,
Yeah. But the leveling creatures was an interesting idea, but it had too many issues with it, and we had to.
I could see the issues, yeah. But from a conceptual standpoint, I mean, it's a good idea. Well, I mentioned them earlier, but surely you guys you've talked about, discussed, and you know about the free shards, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your personal take on it, man? I mean, do you feel like this is your baby and somebody's just taking your asset and just reproducing it and monetizing it, fracturing your player base? And this is a question from the person who runs the biggest shard now, who I talked to before. I mentioned I was talking to you, Owen from Outlands. Shout out Owen, but he wanted to know your take on it.
My position has changed over time.
Okay.
When I was running the game, I was
like F those guys, right?
Yeah, right. Totally, because you're stealing money from my paycheck.
Right.
I feel like I think there's been some studies done on this that basically show that while the feeling is that it cannibalizes, that the actual data shows it doesn't. And that despite what the owners of the IP feel or will say, it doesn't actually cannibalize, but legally you have to defend your IP.
Correct. Yes, it's yours. You created it. It's your, it's
so it's a tricky position.
So the logic for them, the study would be like, hey, this new person someone watches this podcast, they say, I want to be an orc on this guy, whatever. They join me in Outlands, they get into UO, they become a fan of the franchise, and then thus you benefit ultimately. Is that
that's right. And then they'll end up exploring what other options, including the original one.
They'll be like, who's Judge Dryden? What the hell is that? Right.
Yeah.
Then they'll search that and I can see it.
And what you ideally should like to do is figure out a way to embrace and support that community of people who run those. And so, if I was
still in charge over there,
what I would do is I would just say, hey, look, you guys, versus me like trying to defend or fight you guys. Look, can we just do some nominal licensing fee? Like literally it's $99 a year or something like that, right?
Right.
Where I say, I'm going to give you legal coverage to do this, and where, I now have, defended my IP.
Yes, they've paid something, given something back, right?
Right.
They're paying the license, and
Yeah, and then I require you to put some legal blah 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 to say I'm not the official thing, but I pay my licensing fee. Blah blah
correct.
blah.
Yeah, I'm the official franchise
Disclaimer on the
person.
thing. And by the way, and then you also have to point to my thing
Correct.
to say
Yeah.
for the official version, go over here.
Check out their stuff here.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
So
That's
have you seen Outlands at all? Have you messed with it? Do you know anything about it or?
I can't remember. I've been on at least 3 different freeze shards, but I can't remember if that was one of them. But I've done it
from like 2020, I think 2019, 2018. So it's pretty new. They got a lot of, anyway, I'm not trying to sell it, but yeah. It's one of the bigger ones now, but there's a handful of other ones going on.
Yeah, I've done events on at least 3 different freeze shards. So
okay.
So obviously I am not
anti
them. So
well, I want to role play. I mean, you were a D&D player, right? And one thing I always say, I don't think this has been covered, or maybe you've heard it before, but I haven't heard it in an interview. And I'll speak to me now at this point. You guys reached out to a lot of players, a lot of existing role players, people who, like you, who played D&D before, people who have a history in different sort of role play avenues. But you also hit the kids like me who didn't even know what that was, right? And so I grew up in inner city Houston, Texas. Nobody I know knows anything about D&D or I've never seen anything fantasy. I don't know anything about it. And I get this game, right? And I come across these people that are pretending to be something else, right? It was such a foreign concept to me, right? I'll never forget this story, man. And I wish I remember the dude's name. I think the first time I left when I started the game, it truly felt like I was somewhere new because people were coming and going. And at first I thought they were NPCs, of course, like a lot of people did. But then I was in the forest nearby fighting like some new NPC or whatever. And this guy in like all black comes and he's like, "Hail, citizen, how are you? How art thou?" or something. And I was like, surely this is an NPC talking to me. But it was a player, right? And I'll never forget that interaction where he basically saved me and he gave me some pointers and he gave me some tips. And it was the first time in my life I experienced that feeling of existing outside of my own reality, And so I think UO did that for a lot of kids, man. A lot of young kids, we always hear about the person who lived in the middle of nowhere that got to experience, socializing with a lot of people. There's a lot of us who lived and had friends galore, but this is the first role play experience we had. So it truly was an impact for me. So it's one of those things where you guys hit both the hardcore role players and non-hardcore role players. You branched out both, and I think that probably had an impact on y'all's success. Obviously, you got new player. It wasn't just D&D people logging on. It was regular folks. Regular folks who became nerds afterwards. You know what I mean? And then now we just all love the game.
That's really cool. I don't know if we're that aware of that impact. I mean, I think most of our assumption has been that it was just people who were already, computer game players, already role players. But yeah, I mean, that's awesome that, we were capturing people who had never experienced anything like that before. Because, I mean, it is a pretty magical moment when you're transported like that. Like I remember distinctly, walking like in my public library, when I was in elementary school, walking by people playing D&D for the first time. And like kind of going,
look weird, right? Like, what are these guys doing?
What are these guys doing? And then like, poking my head in and going, what are you guys doing? And then they explained it to me, and I sat down and the dungeon master started like telling the party where they were and who they were about to fight. And I was like, oh my God, like it's like being in a Star Wars movie.
Right. You get to take on this other persona, man. It's awesome. It's really fun. And so, speaking of personas, okay. Lord Blackthorn. Talk to me about it, man. Where did the name come from? what's the history there? I mean, or is it something you planned with Richard Garriott? Did it exist before, UO?
Yeah. So, you know, all the characters in the single player Ultimas.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard Garriott, Lord British,
Right.
he was in this group called the SCA, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism, which is a LARP group, basically.
Okay.
So they get together and dress up in medieval clothes and like do mock battles, and it's like a Renaissance fair stuff.
Right. Yeah,
right.
I'm dressed up in character and stuff.
Yeah. And like they were doing it before there were actually Renaissance fairs. So
yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? If you think about it, it's such a
yeah.
It just came to them to do it. That's wild.
Yeah, and they also played D&D together, and so then they all had character names, and like Richard's was Lord British, and it was, he got that moniker because his dad, when he was in NASA, was stationed briefly in England, and so Richard got the nickname Lord British, or his character name Lord British. So, but all the main characters in the Ultima series are named after his friends who either he played Dungeons and Dragons with or he were in the SCA.
Oh, okay.
So Gweno, Iolo, Dupre, etc. So
okay.
Now and then, so when you're playing those Ultima games, everybody who's in your party, those are real people that are friends of Richard's.
Yeah, so that's a cool thing to do as a friend, right? You're like, hey, dude, I'm gonna throw you in my game real quick.
So if you're ever hanging around Richard in Austin, and he introduces you, you might meet one of those real people.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
So in the single player Ultimas, one of the bad guys is a character named Blackthorn.
Right.
He is not actually based on a real person.
He's not. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was. Okay.
So he's just a bad guy.
Okay.
He's just in the single player linear Ultimas. He's just a bad dude. So going back to that point I was making, where there was this synergy between Raph and Richard about making Ultima Online this believable place,
right?
They went deep into like the lore, and Richard and Raph, and I participated in this too. The three of us were like, well, Ultima Online can't really be part of the linear Ultimas, because those have their own narrative, which we tell to the player.
Mm-hmm.
And Ultima Online is going to be sort of happening all the time.
Correct. You can't control that narrative too.
Right. It's not really. And so we have to sort of put it in a parallel universe.
Correct.
And by the way, this is way before, like, everyone's used to multiverses now, right? Because of Marvel. But this is way before any of that. And so Richard and Raph, we sort of like went through all the lore, and we went all the way back to Ultima 1, where there was the Gem of Immortality at the end of Ultima 1, and it gets shattered. Yeah. And so that was our that was our excuse of like, oh, look, it's a multiverse. It's this whole other thing, and it's its own thing, and every one of those shards is a server, and it's its own universe, and it can do whatever it wants.
Correct.
And in this parallel universe, and so I was like, Richard, well, you have your own character, which is Lord British. And I'm like, I want to be in the game playing somebody. Like, I want a character too. And so we went through all the lore, and also, as you can see, I liked to dress in black.
Okay, I was about to say, yeah, that's kind of your thing, right? So
yeah, and so we were like, well, I'm like, and so we went through like, who could I be? And also Richard is the good guy, and I was like,
Sure.
well, what if I'm sort of not a bad guy, but a foil to Lord British? And so that's how we picked Blackthorn.
Okay,
but we didn't want him to be a bad guy. So
no, he's
Richard,
a good guy ultimately, if you think about it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, he's a twisted good guy, you know?
Yeah. So Richard and Raph and I came up with this narrative where, you know, in this universe, Blackthorn isn't bad, but he and like Lord British are, you know, it's order versus chaos. It's, you know, I believe that, you know, everyone should have free will, that, you know, and that this universe, all these shards are just as valid as the prime timeline.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
and so that's how we settled on, you know, me as Blackthorn. And we also made that rule, which they don't adhere to now, but we made the rule that, you know, Lord British and Blackthorn would only ever be in the game if we were driving them. So when we were
it had to actually be you Lord.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So when Richard and I were at Origin, the characters of Lord British and Blackthorn were only ever in the game if it was one of us.
Okay, so if they saw them in game, then the player knew it was you guys. Okay.
Yeah. So if you ever were from like, you know, 95 to 99, if you saw those two characters in the game, it was one of us.
Man, you must have been in awe, man. If you got, I imagine in 98, 99, you log on and you're like, this shit is crazy. I can only imagine you're at the keyboard, what that feels like. You know, you guys created this thing, and as an executive producer, you're probably like, fuck, we did it. You know what I mean? It's not perfect. You probably are looking at things that, you know, I can only imagine as you see trees or whatever, you're like, fuck, I remember when we were doing all, because you saw it all, you know. So it's an interesting concept to log on to your world, you know, that y'all created. I don't even know what that would feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible, you know, especially when everything from little things to big things. I mean, like, you know, there were the big things like when we would do an event like the wrestling series with the Hulkster. I mean, that was, you know, but then even just unscripted things were, because people loved, because, you know, I had a castle in Britain, Blackthorn's castle, and people loved to break into my castle, right? My castle was locked.
You actually have a castle also in Outlands, by the way. I don't know if you know this. There's a Blackthorn's castle there. So
yeah.
How you feel about that? I won't ask you, but your name still lives on in Outlands, by the way.
So, you know, my castle would be locked, but people would get in. And so I would log into my castle, and there would be people in my castle, and I'd be
just people found little nooks and crannies that they snuck in, or what? It just
well, I mean, it's, you know, it's like whatever the latest exploit was. So, and I'd be like, you know, what the hell? And so I would have fun with whoever had broken into my castle.
That is hilarious. So you're like the angry homeowner who like catches the burglars, and you could
and so I would like freeze them in place or turn them into a chicken for a brief, you know, and like, but I would like chat with them, you know, or I'd make them play chess with me, or, you know, like, you can't leave until you win a game of chess against me, or, you know, or I would be like, okay, well, you're gonna have to teleport somewhere randomly, you know, on the map. You know.
Just send them to the middle of nowhere and just get them out of there. Yeah. One thing, you know, I talk about this a lot, and you guys, the map that y'all developed, was just phenomenal, man. It really felt like you would travel from one place to another. And early on, you know, you guys had the system where the cities were connected, and the cities sort of had there was a group of people that hung out from each city depending on the proximity to your house, and it really kind of gave it that feel like, oh, this is my neighborhood. This is, you know, I live in Minot. I live over here, you know, and it was sort of an interesting dynamic on the build up. one thing that I always gripe about, maybe you agree with me, is like there's these beautiful worlds. We'll stick to UO, but any of these games that create these wonderful worlds, and then everybody just teleports everywhere. You know, I fucking hate that. Starr, like I despise it. It's one of my top 5 peeves. It's like you log on to have an adventure. You guys provided the sandbox for an adventure. You can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. And there's a world out there to explore with all these wonderful little places to visit that y'all created. It points of interest all over the map. And it's just like recall, teleport me to the instance, send me right back to the bank and WoW, for example. It's a shame, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's this definite like convenience factor that sort of overwhelms the experience factor for most games. You know, it's interesting. I think there could be, you know, just like there's this fan base for you know, the Souls-like games, I would call them, where they're super difficult games, you know, like that, like, you know, the Elden Ring, and
they're meant to like, make you cry, you know.
My daughter calls them the games that dad curses at games.
Yeah, okay.
Or the games that dad breaks the controllers. But you know, I think there could be. And there are, you know, games. There is a whole subgenre of like walking games, right?
True. Okay. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with them. I've heard of them, but I've never played any.
But I think that says that you could push I think there would be an audience for taking a sandbox game like Ultima Online, and pushing out all convenience. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there would be
the next town, you know, it would be
crazy. Well, or I mean, at most you'd get a horse.
Yeah.
You know? And because like I remember playing Dark Age of Camelot, right? And like the fastest you could get anywhere was a horse.
But it throws you. I mean, it's the goal is to be immersed in a new world.
Yeah.
Then the goal is to get the player. Well, I say that's my take. I know some people will, you know, prefer the quality of life benefits, or you know, the gold per minute, right? How many gold per minute can I farm here and do this? Right. So I get it. But yeah, there's an adventure to be had, man. That's our big thing. And when we do orcs a little bit, let me show you something really quick, actually.
Sure.
It'll be in my background here. So one of the things we do in the orc life, just to kind of educate you on what we do, is we purposely handicap ourselves. So this is what we've created. So we took your world and we created this. Like, so this is our tier system. Okay, just to give you an idea. And so we level up. There's certain armor you can wear.
So awesome.
So you start off as a snotling. You're allowed a bucket. You're allowed a bucket as a helmet. You get a crook, a pitchfork, a dagger, something shitty, right?
Yeah.
So the worst visually stuff we can think of. You rank up through a scar system we created. So you earn scars by attending events, etc. And then you become a peon, and then now you're worthy of a mount. So the snotlings don't get mounts. They have to walk on foot.
Sure.
And you progress up on up. I'm currently the we call it the goth, but I'm currently here. But yeah, this is our tier system. We created. Nice. And there's something we find of value in handicapping ourselves, you know, sure. and it creates a different sort of environment. Now, granted, we're the type of player that wants to do that shit, right? I mean, so, but one thing, and I bring that up because one thing we handicap ourselves on is we're not allowed magery, so we don't recall anywhere. And so we'd actually force ourselves to do what you say, and go from there. And we created our own lore with we created gods. We have 3 gods that are like written in stone for the past 20-something years. They have their representatives in Ultima Online. We created. I mean, there's a whole. It's 26 years of history now, where you know all the way back from the first fort to now where we play. So it's kind of an interesting take where you know you look at UO, what it created, and like you said, man, it was such a monster platform, Well, let me ask you one more question here.
Yeah.
What about UO, looking again, you have the benefit of hindsight. What were you like, man, I really didn't like that. I really didn't. What's your biggest kind of not hate, because I'm sure you love the game, but what's your biggest like we kind of F that one up?
I mean, the biggest issue is, we were way too buggy when we started.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't take enough time to like stabilize. We shipped too early. Like, we should have spent more time stabilizing the game before we went live.
Yeah, a smart guy once said, no one remembers the day you shipped, they remember what the quality of the product was, right?
I wonder who said that.
Yeah. So that's true though, right? Because I mean, if it's buggy, it might throw some people off, whatever. So it was, I guess early on it was buggy, but you guys patched that stuff up pretty quick, right?
Yeah, I mean, but now whenever I make product, I really try to push, stability and performance as a like number one goal,
right?
Or because it is extremely frustrating as a user to like have the game be unstable or not perform well or crash or whatever. It's just and I mean, I think that would be my biggest. I think the game itself just incredible. I mean, I think it's just an incredible simulation experience, and there's not really many other games still to this day like it.
No. That's like some of us still playing the game. We tried different ones, and you guys ruined it for us. You ruined MMOs for us, man, because WoW comes out, they don't have housing. You can't do this, you can't do that. No, go back to UO.
But yeah, so I would just say the stability and the performance. I mean, I wish we had taken a little more time to be a little more polished when we want.
Yep, and it's something I see in the role play. So I host a lot of events. I do storylines, man. I do campaigns. I create different things for players to kind of experience something unique on UO. We do all kinds of crazy stuff as orcs. We do roadblocks. Yeah. I mean, you'd laugh at some of the stuff we do, like. We impede players' traffic, so we force them to interact with us. We stick them up, we do all kinds of crazy stuff. But one of the things I see when I get other players who message me wanting to do like role play events is this inability to act, and they want to do too much, and then there's no action. So, the game might have been buggy, but y'all guys did it, and sure, ideally it would have been perfect, upon launch, but if you nitpick at everything, I got guys who send me this role play idea and they write pages and pages and pay this and these characters are going to do. I'm like, look, dude, let's get the baseline going and work from there. Their scope is way too big for what they have, and then they end up doing nothing. So then their productivity is zero, right? So that's kind of the idea, but. Okay, so just bugginess. Okay, that's not too bad. So you're a fan of the game, man. I mean, a true fan, and I could tell. Absolutely. I could see it. I could see it in your interactions and your interviews and stuff. So we got to get you to play an orc sometime, man. At some point you're going to become a snotling. Oh, and you know what? We'll let you start at peon. Okay, I'll give you.
That would be awesome. That would be a blast.
Well, hey, yeah, let's do it, man. Hey, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for everything you've done, man. I think I speak on behalf of all the current players. All the current players. Thank you for the work you guys put in, man. Some of us are still enjoying your product, and we hope to see more stuff from you, man. You still out there working, doing anything in the work you want to tell us about, or?
Yeah, well, I'm not doing games directly anymore.
Okay.
I'm in the technology space.
Okay.
Building digital twins mostly. So think Sim City, but it's a real city.
I saw that. So I did see that because I live in Houston. So Corpus Christi, what you did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a game changer, man. I don't know. I was seeing. So for the listener, basically what you do is you take a space. Let's say I run a prison. which I think it should be in every prison in America, by the way. I have a criminal justice background, but you take a facility, any sort of place, whether it could be a whole port, it could be a business, it could be a shopping center, a hospital. Yeah. You guys set up these sensors and you tag like everything, right? Basically. Yeah. And you create a virtual world that shows me in real time, and I track data on where things are going and moving in real time.
Yeah. So the most recent one we built is for the Port of Corpus Christi, and we track all the vessels in the port. So the Port of Corpus Christi is like 50 square miles, and it's like 150 facilities. And so at any given time, there's like 400 vessels. And so we're helping them combine all of the vessel movement with all of the police security incident data. So they're able, so whenever there's like a storm or like a security incident, like a trespasser, they can see not only where the incident is happening, but also like the weather and where all the vessels are. If there's a fire or a chemical spill or a trespasser, or like I said, like a hurricane, they know where everything is.
They can log in and see exactly where everything's at.
Yeah. Because you can't right now, there's no way to see everything on a single screen, because like
you got 100 cameras that are showing you 100
which is
images.
Right, because security cameras, they have security cameras everywhere, but each one of those is its own image, not the whole thing. So
and it's not capturing the data. That's the problem, right? It's showing you, but how far is it away? Is it 100 yards out? Is it how close is it to the fire? You don't know. You can guesstimate, but
so we do things like generate a radius around the fire and show them, hey, here's every single security camera that's in 100 meters. Here's every single vessel that's in that radius. Here's all this. Here's all the nearby vehicles. Here's all the security gates.
Still creating simulated worlds, man. You're still doing it.
Yeah. I just exchanged dragons and orcs for oil tankers and security gates.
All right, well, Starr, man, again, I appreciate it, man. Before we go, you got to give one last Nugra. It's our war cry, so you got to give Nugra. All right, man, have a good one. Take care.
All right, take care.
Later.